Hi everyone, I'm Vijay. Today I'm going to talk about the what is the Java terminology and what are the different types of keywords in Java. So if you see my slide clearly, right? So first we will talk about the object. What is an object? So objects in our object-oriented programming is very important. Okay, so in this technology, right? So Java technology, or if you take a C Sharp, and whatever it is. So very object-oriented technology, right? So objects are the key part. Okay, so what is an object? It is an instance of a class. Okay, so let's see that how to create the object and how to use that object in coming up next 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, so class. What is a class? Class definition is a simple blueprint from an individual objects created. Okay, so it's just like a simple structure you are going to provide. Okay, and what are the necessary things required for your object. Okay, and it will be written inside that class in a structured way. Okay, the another term we use mostly here in our Java classes is interface. So what is an interface? Okay, interface is a simple contract to the class or a reference to the class. So where you can see that empty methods. Okay, and you can declare a variables. Okay, something like this. So from if you see this in Java 8 onwards, so they give an option to create a default methods, but just focus on the context. For the interface is like a simple declaring the methods. That's a definition of a methods, I can say. Okay, nothing will be there. Okay, so these three terms we use in our Java terminology world, I can say. Okay, so the object, class, and then interface. So these three are very, very important. We need to understand that how it is being used, object, and where you are going to create the classes. Okay, and what scenario you are going to the classes, right? And where you should create the interface and how it is going to inject to your class, right? So these three main things you have to be very much familiar. So let's start with the creating the class. Okay, so what is a class and what it is having? Okay, and then we will start creating the object, and then we will do some keywords. What are the keywords? We will implement it and we will run those programs. Okay, and we'll see that. Okay, let's go back to our Eclipse. I think hope everyone has a same Eclipse, and you guys are having the Java project setup as well, right? So we will create a fresh package here to understand better. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just creating a new package. So what I'm going to put com.demo.keywords. Just done. Okay, and we will create a one simple class. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm creating a sample um, keywords class. Right, okay, sample keywords class. Just click on the finish. So that's all. So you can see that one class has been created here. So this is sample keywords. So what is a class? So the class contains, okay, variables and methods. Okay, and prior to that you can put a blocks possible. Okay, and you can put a some classes. You can create a inner classes or anonymous classes. Okay, so these are all the key things you should understand what class contains. Okay, if you see here, class, and then name of the class given, and then you can define the variables. What are the variables you want to define here? So variables are here, two types of variables. Okay, and we will create one by one. Okay, the first variables, we can say that class level variables, level and instance level variables. Okay, so similarly we have these two. Okay, and the static blocks, static. Similarly here also we will see that static and what is static and what is non-static. Okay, methods, static methods and non-static methods. So for time being, this, so please, you guys can ignore it. Inner classes, it can be done later. But our focus intention is to create the variables, blocks, and methods. We'll test it. Okay. So let's see that what are the keywords. So here if you see public, protected, default, private. So these are all called as the access modifiers. Okay. So where to use, let's see. Okay, the main goal of this access modifier is to control the objective states and behavior. Okay, and then it shows the required information to your methods or some other classes. Okay, so for example, if you see this public, so here you see this one, right? So whenever we start creating any class, it by default our IDE provides a public class sample keywords. Okay, so the public keyword is already represented here. Okay, so it can be like, for example, the access modifiers levels can be used to these um, variables, blocks, and methods, and the access specifiers default can be used at class level. Okay, so first we will go to the primitive types. Okay, so we will discuss how to apply this protected, default, and private one. Okay, the primitive types is simple in any language. Okay, we have a couple of primitive types, right? So not couple of, I can say it's around 6, 7, 8 uh, primitive types are available. So those are like int, long, char, boolean, string, and these things, right? So how to define, for example, take a int I is equal to 10, okay? Long j is equal to 2l. This is the representation of each and everything. String s is equal to abc. This is how we represent the variables in Java. So for example, boolean, put some value. Let's check the variable name. And so here, if you see this one, so int represents the one primitive type, and we are putting I as a reference to that, and 10 is the value we assigned. Similarly, long, string, and boolean. So these are all the primitive types, and we can define it here at the class level, beginning of the class, or wherever you can use, can define it. There is no restriction here, but it should be within the class, so that your class blueprint class will hold these variables, and wherever you want, you can use that one. Okay, so if you see this one here, so I did not specify any access modifier. Okay, and it is by default. If you are not specifying, it is nothing but a default access modifier. Okay, so it's a default access modifier because you did not specify anything. Okay, but I can change this one to private. So if I use this one, so your access modifier, okay, is access modifier is private. It means that only your long J21 can be used within the class. So that is the meaning of specifying the private for this variable. Okay. So for example, if I say string s, so I can define this one public string, and I can write a protected. So if you see here, so I all declared all four types of modifiers. One is the default one, so you can access this in the class or the same package classes. The second one is the access modifier. We declared private, so it is restricted to within the class. You cannot access outside. And the public one you can access anywhere in the same project. Okay, and protected. So this is we will discuss further later, and when we talk about the inheritance oops concept. But to give you answer, so whenever you implement extends this class to your subclass, then immediately you can use this. Okay, so this is a primitive types available, and you can check that in Java documentation in Oracle. So you will get the most a lot of primitive types available, and you can try it. Okay, so that access modifiers and specifiers also you are okay, right? And then I told you that class level variables and instance level variables. Okay, so here what is the class level variable? Okay, let's talk about this one. Okay, so the primitive types you guys know, right? So blocks, variables, and methods, and can be applied to the static and objects. So here you need to remember two things. So whenever you start working and creating a class and creating a variables, methods, blocks, you need to understand whether it is a static block or a normal instance level blocks, instance methods or instance variables or class level variables. So what is a class level variable? Okay, so class level variable is nothing but a whenever I say static int k is equal to 10. Okay, so what does this mean? So it is static. Whenever I say define the static, whenever this class is loads, right? So if you remember our first class, so class when this class is compiling and loading that time, so this all this data will be available to your all the members, all the methods, members, everyone can access this value. There is no restriction. So static int k is equal to 10. It will be available to your all the methods, blocks, constructors, and your implementation classes as well. Okay. So this is a one advantage of Java that you can define without creating any objects. So creation of object is not required here. So you have the class and you just declare this one, right? So there is no need to create any object. So this is called as a class level variable. Okay, class level variable. Okay, class level variable. So these are all the instance level variables. Okay, instance instance level variables, and these are all the class level variables. You can declare it is applicable to all types of primitives. Okay, so next step is like a blocks. So what are the blocks? So you can see here static blocks can be created and can be created a non-static block. Yes. So what is a static block? So I said right. So whenever you create a class, whenever you start creating, if you want to, yes, I need to create a static block because this block is used for all purposes. So for example, if I write a static block, so static block, right? You see, right? So here I created a one simple static block. This is how you are going to create a static block and you can use it. So, right? So whenever your class is loaded, automatically these statements will be executed, runs on your environment and gives a proper output or anything. So generally people used to write a Java beginners to create the connections basically. So create the connections, database connections, put there, and they will start using that connection for all purposes, all kinds of methods. Okay, and this is a static block. And what is a non-static block? So a non-static block is nothing but it's a simply declaration. So if you see here, non-static block. So here you can write, but when it is executing is while creating your object. Okay, this is very important to understand. This is a non-static. Okay, so this is a non-static block I created. Guys, right? You understood, right? So now we will execute one by one. So which is executing first and how it is executed. So methods, coming to the methods. So we have the methods also can be written in the form of static purpose and the non-method, non-static methods, I can say. Okay. So let's see. So what is the static and method and what is a method first of all? So method is nothing but your behavior. Okay. So what is your behavior want to put like a basic business logic you want to put here, right? So for example, if I start writing a one simple method, void, okay, test method. Okay, I created simple method. Okay, so this is a simple method. This is a non-static method. I can write this as a static method. This is a simple static method. I can create it. So here you can write an static. So this is a method declaration. So if you are seeing here my screen, right? Static is a keyword I'm using. Void. Void is the return type. Void means nothing. You're not going to return anything from this method. Just you're executing. That's all. This is a test method. Is a method name, method signature. Okay, you need to write like this, and these are these things like a parenthesis. You need to put a left right parenthesis and open braces, and inside that you can write a logic. Okay, now we will write a non-static method. So what are the non-static methods? Right. Test non-static. Test static method. I'm going to change this name. Okay. So this is a simple method declaration. Okay, so just I'm copying this statement and making this one to be non-static method. Okay, so this is how the method declaration. Okay, and here we can declare the access specifiers, access modifiers. Okay, access modifiers. So for example, here if I use um, this is the default one. Okay, default modifier. Default modifier. Okay, so here you can write like public method, and I will create a methods public method and private methods we can write. So let's see here private. You can create like this private, and you can write a public method. You can create like this public. Okay, and what else you can do that? This is a default method. So you can specify the access modifier levels to your methods as well. So there is nothing wrong. Okay. And it will be useful, right? So this is a very important. Whenever you declare any public method, okay, you are exposing the business logic to outside the classes, outside this class. Okay, and whenever you use the private methods, right, so this private method, whenever you write in any code, okay, then it will be applicable this logic to this particular class only. Okay, and private modifier and public modifier. Okay, I am in similarly you can create for static also, there is nothing now. Okay, the same thing. So right now what we will do is, this is a structure how we are going to write a simple method, static methods and the non-static methods. These are all the non-static methods with the access modifiers. Okay, and next step what we will do is, uh, we'll understand the object. So what is an object? Object is nothing but a simple the state and behavior of the class. State is nothing but what are the variables you declared. Okay, so for example, if you see here, I declared these are all the variables, instance level variables, right? This is the object state, I can say. Okay, so the object state is nothing but what are the variables declarations you made it here. Okay, so this object will holds the entire instance level variables information as well as the method behavior of the logic. What are the logic you have mentioned here, right? So the all the methods behavior will be stored in that object. Okay, let's start creating the object for this one. Okay, now what we will do, we will write a simple main method. Okay, so we created a simple main method and we'll start creating a one object for this class and we'll try to access those variables. Okay, so now what I'm doing is sample keywords, how to create an object. Okay, we'll learn. So now what you need to define sample keywords and then you need to provide the reference for this class. This is called a reference and new operator. So you see this one, right? NEW, new operator. So it turned to red color. So it is one of the keywords. Okay. So the keyword is very important to create an object. Okay. So whenever I copy this one and I put it here, and that's it. That's all. So I created a new object with the reference of sample keywords. So understand this one. So what is this? So sample keywords, and I don't see this one, right? So this is called constructor. So what is the constructor? So constructor is nothing but a, it is simple class name will be there and it will be looks like this. I will write a simple constructor for this one. If you are not having this one, by default it creates default constructor. No need to worry on that. So public sample keywords, that's all. So this is the default constructor for every class. Eclipse will be generated background like this. What are the Java programs, not only Eclipse tool. You can, whenever you create a class, you can see this one. Okay, if you want to create a default constructor, it automatically creates and it executes. Okay, and if you write a without this keywords also, Java environment itself, it creates the default constructor and it will execute it. No need to worry on it. Okay, system data terminal. This is default constructor. That's all. So whenever I say single keywords and then this new object creation done, and then it executes the print information available inside the this constructor information. Okay, so let's look into this another part, and then we will execute the program. And if you see this one constructor default, this is a default constructor just I create, and parameterized constructor also can be possible, and we can create like this. Okay, the same thing you just copy it here and put it this one. So what is the parameter? Okay, so whenever you say int I. Okay, so here if you see this one, what are the methods we created? Just it's empty methods, right? Nothing parameters, we are not at all passing anything, right? And here what I'm doing is I'm creating the constructor, okay, with the arguments. This is called as arguments or parameters. Okay, you can pass int I, okay, comma something string, comma, yes, something like that. You can pass a number of arguments here. There is no restriction here, right? So similarly, I forgot to tell you guys, you can create a methods arguments, right? So how it is going to be, if I say same method name, you cannot use more than once. Okay, so either it should be, you can write a int some value. So now this method is non-static method with parameters. Okay, and similarly our constructor with parameters. So then how to create the parameterized constructor? So here you called only default constructor, but you did not call this one. So how do you create an object for this? You just copy it and paste it. And what you do is you need to change the reference because it is a different one. Sample keywords with parameter passing. Okay, and then you can pass this some. What is the int value? You can specify one to so many. Okay, then if I'm passing 10, then this constructor is going to be called and it populates the value, whatever the value you are giving. So you can see this one. So I can put I, right. So this is how we are creating the instance variables, class level variables, static blocks, non-static blocks, okay, and then static methods and non-static methods, parameter methods, okay. You can pass what are the parameters, you can pass it and you can get it and you can perform the logic and you can, so right click and run, see the program, so what is giving, okay, run Java application. So it printed. So the first statement what we see, this one is a static block. So always execute the static block because whenever you start creating uh, the class loads and then it loads into that memory, start memory, and it prints that static blocks will be executed. And this is a non-static block. Okay, you understood, right? So whenever I started creating this object, so prior to creation of this object constructor, it calls the non-static blocks. Okay, so always you just remember that. So whenever I say object creation time, it executes, it looks for any non-static blocks that are there, then I will execute it first. Once it is done, then it goes to the default constructor. So default constructor, which is this one, sample keywords. So this is a default constructor, right? And then, so that's all. So for this object we created. Then second object, when we started creating this object also, it looks like what is there any non-static blocks are there. So I will execute it. So it executed first. Then it looks for your constructor. So what is the parameterized constructor available? You are passing a 10. So it looks for the uh, constructor parameterized one. And then it prints this. Simple. Okay, and now we will try to access the methods, how to access the method. So this is a simple creation of an object and you just saw this, right? Non-static blocks, static blocks execution and constructor execution. Let's try to execute the methods dot. So now you see right here methods. Now we will try to access the methods. Okay, so test non-static method, uh, we can pass some value. Okay. Now, what is the output? Anyhow, we written already system statements and it will print. So this is how we are going to call the non-static method. For example, if you see this one, this is a non-static method. So in the non-static method, parameterized one, we need to pass some value. Otherwise, it will execute the some other method. This one it will call. Okay. So let's see, and what is the out statements we are going to see in the console. Okay. Example, test non-static method and with the parameters. Okay, and you can call all the you can call this private methods also, no problem. Okay, for example, if you see this one, so but you need to put a reference. So always you remember. So I need to use the reference of this. Otherwise, it will not call you. Okay. So for example, if you see non-static method, and test private non-static methods. So if I run this class, what I'm going to see here, if you see this one. So these are all the default. It is started printing. So if you see here, I am in non-static method with the parameters. I am in non-static method, right? It is going to this method and printing the statements available inside this one. So the goal is in this inside the method, you can write it, whatever the logic you want, and you can return that logic to this method. Okay, and then you can access the private methods. You can access the default methods, whatever you want. You can do this one. Nothing else. Okay. This is the one advantage of the simple one. Advantage basically, I can say. So simple, you need to find out the what is the object reference and then available methods like a default, public, protected, whatever it is. Okay, you can access those things. And then we will see one method we will create and we will return the one method. Okay, for example, int uh, return statement. Okay, doing here some value. So what is the business logic you are going to put? Int a, int a, int b. Simple one. What I'm doing here, return a plus b. That's all. My goal is grab the two parameters to this method and calculate it, sum it, and then return the value. Okay, let's see how it is going to work it. The reference, you take the sample keywords reference, test. So 2 comma 5, simple, right? Now what will happen the output? See, we are not printing it. Okay, we did not print anything, right? So that's why system container. You just put it here. That's all. Now we will run this program. Very simple. You see this output is 7. Okay. So like this. So you can write the logic and you can return the statements. And then the value will be returned and it will be printed here. And then how to access the static methods, right? So we created a static methods here. You guys see, right? Static method. So nothing else is very simple. You just call this method test static method. Okay, simply you can call inside this one static method. That's all. No need of your object constructor, object reference or anything. It's not required. Just you call as a test static method because you're already in the static method. Only static related things will be accessed without any object reference in the static methods or blocks. Only we can call this one. So for example, if I run this program, so test static method. So I am in a static method. You guys see, right? Okay. So it is like this you need to use. For example, if I want to use this static method in any other method, for example, if you take in non-static method, how to use this one. So can I use this one? Okay, let's see. So for example, how to access sample keywords class name. Okay, and here I'm going to class name dot. You see, right? So it is available. Okay, it is available to see this one. But what it is saying, you just see here, the method print boolean. So method print boolean is not applicable to for the arguments void. Why it is saying, so here you can see this. This is a compilation error, right? So whenever you see this compilation error, okay, you are not able to use this, okay? And just try to remove this. Try to put it here. You see, right? So inside the non-static method, I'm going to use the, I'm going to call the static method, right? Because it is available. So whenever your class is loaded, it is available, right? So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to print this information. So if you are, there is another way you can directly use straight away. You can declare with the class name dot like this. This is also possible. There is nothing wrong. So class name dot your static methods. So that's also possible. So like this. So these are all the variables and methods you can create it and you can use it. So here if you see this is the constructor default parameter I already explained and final. So what is a final? So final is a one keyword where you can use for the variables and classes methods you can declare it. Okay, so this is final means it's a immutable. So whenever you define a final variable int I is equal to 0, it means that it is a constant. You cannot change the value of that one. Abstract. Abstract is a keyword. It is used for the methods and the class level in classes to hide some logic between one class to other class. And super is nothing but whenever you are trying to access the superclass methods. So that we will talk about in for our upcoming sessions. And this keyword is nothing but it's a reference to your current object. Okay. So for example, if you see this one, I created an object, right? So if I say that this dot, so you can use this object reference anyway. Okay, and you can create. So this represents basically. So this represents see the current object of this class. Okay? So whatever the things you are accessing, okay, and like methods or variables and anything, it can be accessed through the this keyword. Whereas super keyword is used to the accessing the superclass information. Okay, that's all, guys. This is pretty much about the basic Java terminology, keywords you should understand and you should do the practice before jumping into the OOPS concepts. So OOPS concept, all the concepts like a encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, everything runs with these basic keywords. Okay, only these basic keywords are enough to grab the knowledge on the Java core Java subject. Okay, thank you very much. If you like this video, please subscribe it to my channel, Vijay Salatek, and you can share it to your friends and relatives. Thank you. Bye.